Now that is what I'm talking about. So this is going to be an exciting video, and a video that I've wanted to make for quite a while, because I of course get to talk about my favorite series and my favorite character of all time, Metroid and Samus. So with Nintendo's brand new console, the Nintendo Switch, looming just around the corner, we're like 3.5 weeks away, it doesn't even feel real. Of course, a lot of us are starting to wonder about what kind of games and franchises and series, first party or even third party, might end up actually showing up on Nintendo's new console. Now for myself, and for a lot of Nintendo fans, one of the series that we're all wondering about is Metroid. What the hell is happening with Metroid? There's been such a topsy-turvy back and forth in the news between fans and folks at Nintendo like Miyamoto, and all these different things about what's happening with the series. When is Metroid going to come back? When is Samus going to come back? Because of course we did get Metroid Prime Federation Force, this game right here, in the last, I don't know, what, 6, 7, 8 months or whatever when that came out. But no real Samus in that game. There was kind of a weird little teased appearance and maybe something with a boss fight, but really, we didn't get the Samus of the Metroid game that we've been waiting for. Even though I actually don't hate that game, it's pretty good in a lot of ways. So, what's going on with Metroid? Is there a future for Metroid on the Nintendo Switch? Is there a future for Metroid, period, within Nintendo? Maybe it would show up on the 3DS, or the rumored successor to the 3DS. Who even knows? But I wanted to discuss my thoughts and theories over what might be happening with Metroid right now, and if and when it comes back, how might that game actually play? So first and foremost, I'll get my main theory about what's happening with Metroid out of the way. For those of you who might not have heard me say it, I've definitely brought it up on several videos over the course of the past few months, starting with probably around the time that Federation Force was actually coming out, and I wanted to really help reassure people that I personally, as a Metroid and Samus superfan, definitely believe, without almost even a shadow of a doubt, that Nintendo is currently, right now, working and tooling away on a brand new Metroid game, and 99% possibility that it's even going to be on the Switch. I don't think it's going to be a 3DS game. I don't think they're yet working for anything that might even be on, again, this rumored successor to the 3DS. This for sure would be their next big AAA home console Metroid game. I feel like Nintendo knows that it's time that they bring out this new version and this new chapter in the Metroid story. And a lot of this conversation for myself, and for a lot of you guys as well, started during, was it last E3 or maybe the E3 before? I can't even remember now. Where they interviewed someone with Nintendo who said that, oh, if we were to make a new Metroid Prime game, that's going to take another 3 or 4 years. So if that's going to happen, it's going to be a while. And I actually think this was 2015's E3, now that I'm remembering right. This was not this past year with Zelda. So they made that statement, and again, I've talked about this before. A lot of folks basically ran with that, saying, oh my gosh, they don't even care about Metroid. They're giving us this Federation Force crap. They're not paying attention. They don't think we want a new Prime game or a new console AAA game. This is terrible. Nintendo is totally screwing the pooch on Metroid, and maybe we'll never see it again. So the thought that I've had in my head since that happened, and again, a lot of you who've been following me for a while have probably heard me bring this up, is in that specific conversation, they did only reference Metroid Prime. And as I said, even on my last video, Metroid Prime is only one of a few ways we've played a Metroid game before, and Metroid Prime is just an open and closed trilogy. There are rumors that they might go into a fourth game, and that may happen, sure. But the long and the short of it is, when they said we're not working on a Metroid Prime game that would take several years to develop, to me that said, oh, okay, well they're just confirming they're not making a Prime 4. They're not making a new first-person, huge, open-ended epic adventure, but they might be making one of many other different kinds of Metroid games. Again, in this newer era of Metroid, if we even wanted to call it that, a lot of folks, and probably a lot of the younger gamers that are only really familiar with the Prime series, think that that's the way Metroid's supposed to be. That's how Metroid always has been. That's the only way it's ever going to be in the future. And that's sad to me, which might seem a little bit counterproductive, because Metroid Prime, the first, is my all-time favorite game, and I do think that Metroid has been its best in that first-person perspective, but really, that's not the origin of Metroid and Samus. Metroid has been both first-person games, it's been a side-scrolling game several times, it's been a third-person action game with Other M, and hell, it's even been a freaking pinball game. So, obviously, there's a couple of different ways that we could experience Metroid. It wasn't until, like, probably the 4th or 5th release of a Metroid game that we even had a game in first person. So I think that we would all do very well to remind ourselves Metroid doesn't have to be in first person, and Metroid doesn't have to be a Prime game, so when they say they're not making a Prime game, that doesn't mean they're not making a Metroid game. I think that I cannot remember who they interviewed, but I think he very specifically said Metroid Prime for that very reason, and pretty much no one, I think except for myself, even picked up on that. So, that being said, that means that I personally believe, and I'm hoping to instill this faith in you guys out there as well, that Nintendo is indeed still working on its next AAA console new chapter Metroid game. I don't know that I believe it's a first-person game, I don't know that I believe it's a Prime 4, and I certainly don't know that I believe that Retro is the team making this new game. All of those things could turn out to be true. It could be a first-person Metroid Prime 4 made by Retro. Sure, that could be possible. I don't have all the answers. I'm just putting the pieces together of my knowledge of Nintendo and my knowledge of Metroid to tell you that I don't really think that it's going to be any of those things. So what could Metroid be if it came back on the Switch? Well, the one, and I mean the one and only negative I would say to the next Metroid game showing up on the Switch is that really the Switch doesn't necessarily offer some of what I think my favorite hardware aspects could have been to a Metroid game. I really liked how the Wii Remote worked for Metroid Prime, and the first-person perspective. I really enjoyed that. The Joy-Cons could potentially allow for that, but something tells me that's not really what they're made for. And I also really liked the idea of the second screen experience that the Wii U was creating, or even the 3DS to be fair, where you could be doing something completely different on the touchscreen. I talked about it in a video way back when Rule of 2 Review was brand new, how you could be seeing someone else's different perspective on the screen, and then Samus is on your TV screen and you guys are coordinating between. I mean, so many ideas could have really been awesome if implemented properly with the Wii U's gamepad and with the TV screen for a new Metroid. Now, the Switch doesn't allow for us to do that. The Switch is a single screen experience. So some of my favorite ideas of how I think a Metroid game could be taking advantage of new hardware isn't really possible with the Switch, at least as far as the screen. The Joy-Cons are a different kind of whole concept, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But when we look at that aspect, that's something that's lost with what was previously some of my favorite ideas for a new Metroid, and it does make me sad. But that doesn't mean a great Metroid couldn't still come to us on the Switch. How are we going to see this new Metroid? Well, I've basically already told you that I don't really see a first-person and or Prime game coming. I just don't think that that's what Nintendo is going to do. And even with their last actual AAA console game, Other M, which no one really liked except for myself and a small handful of other people, they dabbled in combining a first-person and third-person kind of thing, and we all know that that didn't really pan out that well or work. So I don't really see them even trying that. I feel like they're going to do one of two very obvious and very simple things. It's either going to be 2D, side-scrolling, which would be incredible if they took advantage of the power of the Switch and did some really neat things with perspective, like the whole 3D plane on a 2D playing field kind of thing. I mean, there's so many cool things with what they would do, and I would love to see that. However, what I think is probably more likely is just a straight-up third-person Metroid action game. Now, in order for me to talk about this a little bit more, I do have to reference everyone's favorite Metroid game, Other M. A game which, again, I recognize and acknowledge many faults with, but boy, do I like that game. There's so much good in that game. I had a ton of fun with it. I've played through it several times. I like what it added to the lore. Some of the voice acting and the story was a little bit melodramatic and cheesy, and it's too bad, but it's whatever. It was an overly Japanese approach to Metroid, which typically hasn't been a very Japanese series, and I think that they were trying to appeal to both the American, or the West, and the Japanese sensibilities. And gameplay-wise, I think it worked very well. Story-wise, it obviously didn't. But if we were to talk about a third-person action game, and I've said this many times, a lot of you guys might have heard me, I'm repeating some of my points from many different previous videos, but I have to say that there is such an excellent foundation of gameplay within Other M, and it's really too bad people couldn't see that, and I think the main reason they couldn't was also Nintendo's mistake, because they didn't let us use that damn analog stick, and that was a huge mistake by Nintendo. And I think literally just adding the analog stick to that game would have really helped people buy into that game and the gameplay a lot more, but that's not the case. That being said, I think that what they did, the groundwork that was laid gameplay-wise in that game, is really awesome. And I've said many times, I think that there is a future where Nintendo could kind of take the blueprint of what the gameplay structure was in that game, add a little bit more puzzles and puzzle solving and exploration, and they've got an awesome action game. And it would be an action Metroid game, which is a little bit different than some of the different previous Metroid games, to be fair. But that's really what Other M focused on, and what I think it did very well is it did action, fast-paced Metroid action. It was almost like a super toned down Bayonetta or Devil May Cry combined with a slower, more precise, powerful Samus Metroid game. And I thought that there was a lot of potential there, and what was there was very fun, but they obviously didn't deliver on it properly. So you take that to the next level, you fix all the gameplay quirks and problems that existed with Other M, you've got a great game that could release on the Switch, and of course, it would look spectacular. Other M and the Prime games all looked amazing for the hardware that they were running on, to be fair. Whether you like some games or dislike others, they all looked fantastic, and I think it shows the power that Nintendo's willing to put into the series to make it a AAA experience. The thing is, the third-person Metroid game could go in a different way, however, and it could go in more of like the Zelda open-world sandbox kind of route, and to me, that's a little bit different than the third-person action game, because again, I referenced games like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, and those are a little bit more linear and really just fast-paced action-based. And I think that that could be great for a Metroid game, but I think that Metroid demands a little bit more character and flavor than just that. To me, it also needs that nuance of exploration and puzzle solving, and I think that if we remove the sort of grid-based movement, fast-paced action of like an Other M taken to the Bayonetta level, I think that we could look at something that's, like I said, more like a Zelda game where it's really just Samus just planted in this huge open world. Imagine if they took like the Talon 4 overworld from Metroid Prime and made that as big as like a Grand Theft Auto map. And you could just go all these different places and you can kind of pick the direction you want to go, and you're just going. And it's going to be a slower game, and it's not about combos and, you know, defeating and juggling enemies and fighting enemy after wave after wave. I mean, that would probably be peppered throughout because you would have to have good action and combat in a really good Metroid game, but I think that the focus should be more the atmosphere, the ambience, the setting, the tone, you know, like the lighting and the weather and the times of day or whatever, and like what the actual planet looked like. Almost like, you know what, a better example, and someone made this on a video or maybe even one of the podcasts I did recently, a better example than Grand Theft Auto would be like the Xenoblade games, either Xenoblade Chronicles or Xenoblade Chronicles X. You've got potential if you were to take that sort of look and feel and make that a Metroid game and change the gameplay and the exploration and puzzle solving. You gotta have puzzle solving, Nintendo. It's the biggest mistake I think you made with Other M. Bring the puzzle solving and stuff back in and put that together in a Metroid game, third person, open world. Wow, that would be great. There is an argument to be saying that the open world thing is definitely being done to death, especially in the West, you know, and out here in North America, and that is true. I definitely agree with that, and like, if Breath of the Wild was the last open world game I played for the next 5 years, I would be very, very happy with that. That being said, if they decided to go that route with the Metroid, I would not complain, and I think that there is potential, and if anything, Metroid's never truly done that, so it would still feel new for that series, and to me that counts for a lot. But man, it would be great to get that 2D, beautiful, hand-drawn art or just mind-blowing polygon side-scrolling platforming experience as well, you guys. And it's tough for me to tell what I would prefer. You know, the third-person action game, the third-person open-world game, the first-person Prime-like game, I certainly would love that, even though I don't believe in it right now, or this 2D game. I mean, we have to remember that the roots of Metroid, again, for you younger gamers, it's not Metroid Prime. It's not first person, it's 2D, and the series has been, to be fair, at its best when it's in 2D. I have to admit that, even though Prime is my favorite game of all time, there's been more examples of great 2D Metroid side-scrolling than there has been the first-person stuff. I mean, Zero Mission and Super Metroid, don't sleep on those games. Super Metroid, widely considered by many to be the best game ever made, and to me, it's probably top 5. But it's, I mean, it really is that good. And so what Nintendo could do today with the power of the Switch and making it a very long, extended game, I would want like Symphony of the Night level sort of length out of that game and replayability. It could be one of the greatest things that they've done to Metroid in a very long time, and it would really bring the game back with rousing success. Part of the reason I spent so much time on the third-person stuff, though, is because I do have to admit it feels more appropriate for the modern audience and for the modern hardware, and that would get people more excited, and it would be a great showcase for the graphics of the game and the power of the Switch. So I really have to say, at the end of the day, the overall best thing I think Nintendo could do for Metroid would be this beautiful third-person action-adventure exploration game. but I think that the hardcore fans and the old school fans would frickin' die inside with a brand new, beautiful 2D game. And then, of course, a lot of us would just freak out if we did somehow end up getting surprise. It's Metroid Prime 4, look at this, and that would also be so great. So, I guess kind of what we've learned here is the answer is there is real no bad answer. No one wants this online multiplayer stuff, so don't do that. And Metroid Prime Pinball is cool for what it is, but I don't think we need another pinball game either. So as long as we don't get those two things, I think that we're going to be satisfied no matter what Nintendo gives us, provided it's got Samus, and provided it feels like Metroid the way we want it to be. So that's what I think, you guys. Long story not short at all is I think that there's still hope for Metroid. There is a future for Metroid from Nintendo. There's a future for Metroid for us Metroid and Samus fans. And I definitely think there's going to be a future for Metroid on the Nintendo Switch. Do not sell this series short. I absolutely believe it's coming. And if you guys are worried about it and you're afraid Nintendo's never going to do it and maybe we'll never see Metroid again, I'm hoping that I can be some sort of beacon of light for you and a bastion of hope to say, hey, don't worry. Calm yourself, because I really and truly believe Nintendo is going to be giving us Metroid very, very soon. So that's it, guys. Thanks, of course, for tuning in. Tell me what you think about my theories and ideas for Metroid. Do you believe it's coming? Do you think Nintendo's totally shat the bed and we'll never see it again? Do you think it'll line up with some of the ideas that I laid out today, or do you think it's going to be Prime 4? Tell me what you think about all the Metroid, Nintendo, and Switch goodness. What's going to happen with Samus? Bring her back. We're so ready. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. This, of course, is Rob Overlooked to Review, and I will catch you guys next time on another video.